sure they not be 300.
We don't 300, 500 now they carry now.
The thief.
You don't know how much before now.
Oga, na 300.
I say now 500.
Oga, give my
Don't
change.
change.
Inflation. Just a word. But like yeast, it makes everything rise. Rise so high, even our savings can't fight. From food, to transportation, to clothing, to even rent. The reason basic income barely feels like it came. Our hard-earned money failing to dance to the rhythm of inflation. We barely get through today, only to worry about tomorrow. Yet, tomorrow carries so much hope on its shoulders. Hope amidst the fear of how it will turn out. But despite the gloom, there is good news. We found the best way to save with Jollof Plus. Interest so high, 21% net, even inflation stands no chance. So today, we breathe and choose to secure tomorrow. Today we save to beat inflation tomorrow with Jollof Plus. Download the Jollof Plus app on the Google Play Store or Apple Store and earn up to 21% net on yours.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Techpoint Africa Podcast. I am Oluwanifemi Kolawole, your regular host on this podcast, and today I have two esteemed guests in the studio with me to discuss the stories we have for you today. Actually, a lot of things happened in African tech this week, but we decided to just talk about two popular entities and some moves they are making. First, let me introduce the esteemed guest in the studio this morning. Whenever it is you're listening to this. The first person that we have today in this studio is a new face. So I tried to go with the new face first before the one you know. And the voice probably have missed on this podcast. But with me in the studio today is Mojola Ola, is the CEO of Grid Crux Energy Solutions, and he will be joining us to provide expert opinion and insight on one of the stories that we have today, and probably all the stories, because when you're expert in one, you know a lot about other things. Yes. Thanks for joining us today, Mojola Ola.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. And also with us in the studio today is Emmanuel Paul. Do I need to introduce him?
Yes.
Okay, let me introduce him so that I not say it's finish. Emmanuel Paul was the former host. You remember I sent him away from this host position. Yes. So he's coming today as a guest, and he said he's a researcher and analyst. Sorry. Is a researcher analyst. Wait, sorry for the C finish. I'm not Emmanuel.
Why?
Yeah, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
So he's going to provide this insight as a researcher and an analyst to the stories we are talking about today. Thank you, Mojola and Emmanuel, for joining me in the studio. And let's get straight into the story.
All right.
MTN is making big moves, and it recently got license from the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, to generate 15.94 megawatts of electricity across 4 power plants in Lagos State. Actually, for this window, it is not only MTN that got a license. Golden Penny also got a license, and that one even spans across a few southwestern states. But we want to focus on MTN and the license it's getting. For one, this is the first time I'll see that or paid attention to it, that a company that is not in the power sector is allowed or given the go ahead to generate electricity. And I was making a joke earlier in the studio that are we not all generating our own electricity in Nigeria? If you don't have a solar plant in your house, you probably have generating petrol, water, whatever, diesel or gas generating plant in your house. And this is taking it a step further. So let's just talk about it. Is this Mojola, is this like a natural phenomenon? What's the reason behind it? Is it that the nation cannot take care of itself and is expecting private entities to take care of power for it? What's all the situation surrounding this kind of thing?
So I think maybe a good place to start from is maybe understanding the captive concept. And quite frankly, I think maybe in Nigeria, the captive concept is not new.
Okay.
MTN is just so big that they attract a lot of attention when things happen.
Okay.
But a lot of companies have been doing captive generation for their own use, and also different power developers have been working with this captive generation model. And I think maybe from an MTN perspective, what the news lacks maybe is the context to why MTN is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So recently MTN came out to announce the data center projects they are doing, expansion of their data centers and all of that. It may just be a very simple in-house company policy that basically says, look, because of the reliability or security of supply, we want to control as well anything that has to do with our power on this site.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept is not new, but maybe I'll probably say it's a bit new from an MTN perspective, and maybe the size as well.
Okay.
MTN already on a lot of their different, will I call them switching sites or switching centers, are already generating, but maybe it's not up to the 1 megawatt requirement that requires the captive, but
license.
the license. But the concept is not new, not to MTN and not to most of the
Net.
players in the market. But like I said, MTN is just so big that anything they do
Makes the
garners a lot
news.
of attention.
Okay, so what is the idea behind the concept?
So normally, if you need to, according to NEC, that's the Electricity Regulatory Council, if you need to generate beyond 1 megawatt for self-use, then you need to obtain a captive license.
Okay.
And this is probably why, because MTN is doing about 50 megawatts, this is probably why they're doing that. Which is why I said, the announcement or the news doesn't really have the extra context to it. We don't know if it's for their switching centers. We don't know if it's for the new data center. We don't know if it's some, new project that they are rolling out. But maybe a little bit more context from the MTN side or perspective will also help to color that decision a little bit more. But there is no a lot of talk has gone on about it. I've been in a couple of forums or groups where people are really talking about is MTN starting to generate license, and I'm like, this is normal. Yeah, if you go to a lot of their centers today, they are generating their own power. It's nothing new, but again, I think the second or third time I'm saying it. Yeah, MTN is just so massive that when they do stuff, everybody sees it and it attracts a lot of attention.
So it sounds like a big deal. Well, for an average Nigerian, because when you say generating electricity in this sense, it almost looks like, okay, this person is now like generating for commercial activities. But it seems from what you've explained is for the company's use. If they are going to be generating this electricity, no matter the volume, it is for their own use, whether for their data centers or their power centers or anything like that. So it's not like for commercial use for anybody.
So it's for their own use.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the concept of the licenses which have been issued to them to generate. But 15 megawatts, quite frankly, as well in Nigeria I can understand why is a big deal. So, but the understanding is that it's for their own use.
And yes, it's believed that companies like this actually consume a lot of power. Yeah. Then it's coming to me, Emmanuel, that if this is possible, why are not many companies doing it? And we are complaining about power is chasing companies out, even multinationals. Why are they not doing it?
It's quite expensive now. It's not. I don't think getting a license alone is cheap.
Okay.
Let me not use the word affordable since it's not consumer market. Then you now starting to generate your own power. So I'll give you an example. For August 2023, Nigerian telcos combined spent about 38 billion naira on power. Just that month alone. Now, if what they stand to gain, right, is more like you just mentioned, the more reliability by controlling more control over power, so they are not as susceptible to grid fluctuations, say grid shutdowns and things like that.
Yeah,
They're not as susceptible to a certain extent, so the prices of diesel or fuel fluctuating up and down.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's quite an expensive endeavor, and you have to be a company of a certain size to be able to do something like that affordably. I know of a data center somewhere in Ikeja that does a lot. They try to be as off grid as much as possible,
Okay.
and they use a lot of gas
Mm.
to power their data centers to be able to get 99.99% reliability,
Mm.
because a lot of companies depend on them. So, but they are generating their own power with gas, but you have to also understand, okay, yeah, the price of gas can also fluctuate too. So whatever they're using to generate their electricity will also be very, very costly for them. So if they decide to go the solar route, solar panels and everything, they have to
It's still
spend on that.
costly.
So not many companies will be able to afford it.
So it's more on the side of control than on cost, because
Well-
it's not. I don't know if we are. It has to be, because we were here in this studio last week talking about telco's intention to, what's it called, load for load shedding, because well, they can't increase their tariff, and operational costs and inflation and everything is affecting how much they spend.
Mm.
And now this is another cost increase. So I don't know if it's more of saving cost or just for control.
So that control gives them more cost savings. So how do I explain this? But the idea is, by having more control over power,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of, so for every time you make a call and it doesn't go through, MTN is losing money.
Okay.
For every time a base station is shut down, a number of people are losing access to connectivity, and that's money lost for MTN.
Yeah.
So if MTN has more control over power,
Power.
they're able to control the reliability of their centers.
Mhm.
So think about it this way: how much they're going to spend to generate their own power versus how much they will lose if a data center
Shuts down or goes down for a
goes
few
down
minutes.
for a few minutes, and how many customers they are going to lose, how many customers they are going to say, "Hey, I'm done with this. MTN should go and start selling Akara." You see all those kind of things on
For
Twitter.
Blue.
Or-
Sorry, did I mention name?
So when you think about it,
Yeah.
once it's just like spending money. Think about it from a personal perspective. You spend money on your own inverter setup.
Mhm.
It's a lot of money. You could have been spending can be buying your 5,000 naira fuel, small, and be paying your regular electricity bill.
Mhm.
But when you spend a lot of money on inverter over the time or over a number of years, you are saving a lot of money.
Yeah. it did
The
go.
amount of productivity you are going to get in your work, in your business, offsets that cost that you are pulling on. So but not everybody can afford that cost to actually build an inverter setup or a
I
solar
think
setup.
I'm just like assuming, expecting those big companies that are exiting Nigeria to this is solution. But yeah, I think Mojola should be able to tell us that what goes into setting up an electricity generating facility.
So
this.
a lot goes into it, and I think again, I said something when we started having this conversation that to really be able to color, this license or transaction or project,
Mhm.
there needs to be a bit more context to it, yeah, because context from a finance standpoint, context from an operations standpoint. So if you look at it from a finance standpoint, let's assume that maybe you want to do a 2 megawatt, facility. Maybe you need, roughly maybe 4 or 5 billion naira to set that up. However, this is capex that is going to come off your, off your balance sheet. The other alternative to doing that can be you reach out to a private developer who has experience to do this.
Mhm.
Partner with them, sign a power purchase agreement, and they basically take on that cost. And you, as the company that needs the power, buys the power from them. So if you do that, you knock off the whole
Setup.
you knock off the whole upfront capital cost.
Mhm.
You knock off the operations cost of manpower or staff or spares or whatever that you need to buy, and basically you are essentially just buying power from this company at an agreed rate, which is why I said to really be able to color this discussion, then one needs to really look at it from the point of, is this being done from a policy angle? And when I say policy, internal company policy angle, to say our preference is to control end to end. Is this being done for a certain certification or license? Is this being done because the company is seeking to boost the assets or to boost the balance sheet? So there are a lot of questions to
Why?
there's a lot of whys to it from an operational angle. There's also a lot of whys to taking that approach from a finance angle, because if I was to advise as a guy in the power space, I'll probably just say, reach out to the guys that know how to do this. Partner with them, collaborate, face your business, which is the telco business, and buy the power from somebody else. So today you are buying power from the disco, wherever it is that you're operating. If you also look at the base station model, majority of the base stations are run by the base station operators that we have in the country today. The MNOs don't operate these base stations themselves. Majority, they have a few that some of them retain, but majority of these base stations are operated by the base station operators. And when you are working with IPPs, in the case of generating power, or maybe base station operators, you can leverage the economies of scale in that these guys may have 5 plants or 7 plants. They have staff who are dedicated to this stuff. They have spares where they are not just carrying spares for your particular dedicated facility. They have for other ones. You may also be lucky to find, a power producer or generator who is generating power in the area where you need it, not just for you, but also to a couple of other people, and also has a license for, a distribution network. So that way you can drop, because of the collaboration and the economies of scale in that, you can also drop, the cost of your power. But like I said again, there may be a financial coloration to the transaction. There may be an operational coloration to it, and we'll need those insights for us to really be able to give context. And, speaking to companies that are exiting, I think that there is a plethora of options that are available. And the cost of power, quite frankly, in Nigeria compared to, I'll probably say the Western countries today, is still relatively low. It's still relatively low. If you look at the Naira per kilowatt hour, whether you're talking band in, which is 206, I'm trying to do the maths in my head. If you put that over 1,600, maybe that's, 14, 15 cents, per kilowatt hour. If you are doing private IPP generation at a gas level, maybe you see people that would sell maybe 280, 300 Naira per kilowatt hour range. This is like 18 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you compare that, like for like, again, to other countries, and also infuse the cost of labor in Nigeria, minimum wage 70,000 Naira, I think that the conditions are favorable, actually, from that perspective, but there are many other things, in terms of the FX is going up, is coming down, the gas prices are going up, coming down, the reliability of the supply or the availability of the gas, the infrastructure, maybe to convey your products, the policies, the government. Those are more the issues that maybe may challenge, those companies that are exiting, and even the local companies, as opposed to just the cost of power by itself.
I think going from there, you can just talk about the loss MTN Group recorded in H1 2024. Well, my beef with it is that they put it all on Nigeria. It's MTN Group, excuse me. So, Emmanuel, my beef is my beef. So why should they put it on Nigeria?
So the reason why it's very simple, right? Nigeria. So unlike you have another major South African player in Nigeria, which is MultiChoice. Nigeria is not their biggest market. It's not even one of their major markets, right? It's usually grouped with the rest of Africa.
Yeah.
But for MTN, it's about 1/3 of their entire
revenue.
Yeah. So if anything happens to Nigeria, it's usually a big hit to MTN Group. And it's not just in Nigeria, to be fair. There's currency fluctuations in Sudan. And they have about 3 billion in Iran that they've not been able to repatriate. So those are some of the concerns that you have. But yeah, doing business in Nigeria is very, very difficult, like you just pointed out. There are a lot of other factors. Like power is just one that you could decide, okay, do I want to control it? Is it worth it for me to invest that amount? But there are a lot of other things going on, right? infrastructure issues. So now we don't have the critical national infrastructure bill, to my knowledge.
2021. You wrote that story.
To my knowledge,
2021.
I've not been following the news cycle, but if I set up Google Alerts, if I see that thing,
You will know.
I will know. Because but critical national infrastructure. So if you want to look at that, but I'm not going to go into that. If you want to look at tariffs, they've been shouting want to increase tariffs,
They
want to increase tariffs, but they've not been able to increase
NCC
it
is not like
for
reviewing it.
a bunch of reasons like I can't really get into. But Nigeria is a very, very big market for MTN Group.
MTN. So they can't vex and exit.
Not, but they're saying they want to sell some of their stake in the Nigerian market. So they control
Okay.
about 70% or 70 to 80% right now. They want to kind of reduce it to 65%.
Okay.
To sell to local shareholders. And I think they've been doing that. But this is the first time MTN Group has been posting a loss since
2016.
when they got that fine of $1 billion from the
Yeah.
NCC.
Yeah.
So you can see every time the Nigerian market is hit, it typically
It will affect them.
affects MTN Group.
And
Yeah.
they are serving a very important section of the economy.
Exactly.
Literally, if MTN should, well, don't let me mention. But there was this thing that happened during the protest that actually shook a lot of people. Right, using MTN, I don't know whether they were throttling, which they refused to accept, but MTN network was terrible, and it really affected a lot of people.
You know the interesting thing, right? Since last year, I've stopped blaming telcos for network going down
Okay.
because I remember what I said. For every time a call doesn't go through, or
It's a loss.
they're losing money.
They will not deliberately do it.
So if you're a company, would you deliberately want to lose money and lose the goodwill of millions of customers?
It depends on the motive.
But interestingly, think about it this way. The slightest things that you just see as normal could affect telecom network. You
Mhm.
could see a road construction going and be like, oh, they are doing this road.
They
That
do.
could be network that has gone
Yeah.
because they've cut fiber cables.
Yeah.
You could see, oh, they're doing protest and they've started burning stuff and destroying things. They could
Yeah.
have destroyed
The power station.
a power station. They could have destroyed a base station.
Mm-hmm.
So many things could be, right? So we could decide to go the conspiracy route and say, oh,
We
they're
call it
throttling.
conspiracy, but it's fine. Well, no opinions yet, but I don't call it conspiracy. But yeah, that's it about MTN. Nigeria is a good market for them, so I believe that all their investments is worth it, and hopefully this will probably help other multinationals to think of focusing on generating their own power. And
Is it worth it, though?
that's the question. Because sincerely,
Is it
well,
worth
I
it?
think what Mojola mentioned is there are a lot of ramifications to this thing. There can be any other thing that can be controlling this.
I mean,
Because
look at FX alone. So if, as of
No.
last year, it was 800 naira for a dollar,
Mhm.
and we are saying 1.6 right now.
see now, repatriating funds for telcos that are not just local, you know what it costs them. So you know what it will now cost for this kind of investment, but they know what they are looking for, and they will find it.
I'm sure. I'm sure they have their reasons. I'm
Yeah,
sure they
Yeah,
have their
yes.
reasons.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
if I were in their shoes, I would completely de-risk by passing on that responsibility to a company who has experience, in that field to handle that.
Is that what your company does?
Yeah, that's what we do. Maybe
Oh.
not on the gas side,
Okay.
but more on the distribution infrastructure as well as solar and metering solutions. So, and there are quite a few companies in that area that can really help you take on that upfront capital cost, bring the technical expertise. They have the manpower, they can raise the finance, and structure it right. And all you just do is just take on that tariff. So I feel like it's easier for those kind of companies or companies like us to consolidate due to the combination or the aggregation of projects that they have as opposed to you taking that. But like I said, I'm very sure that there's a coloration to
To
it that
it.
we need.
So moving to the second and the last story we have for today, it's about Starlink. I don't know whether you'll be as confused as I am, but I'm going to tell you the news. So Starlink is is building ground stations in a few locations in Nigeria, in Lagos State, in Ogun State, Shagamu in Ogun State, Port Harcourt in Rivers State, and it has already kicked off building it in Lagos and is planning to finish it by 2024. Now, Starlink is the internet satellite provider that many people boast of, that is giving them peace of mind when it comes to internet connection currently in Nigeria. By his side, there was a day I went to Jumia pickup station, and if you see the truck they used to bring Starlink, and be like, these people, I say you don't have money. Where are the people getting money to buy Starlink? But yes, a lot of people are using Starlink in Nigeria. But then I'm trying to understand why ground stations. You're not mobile provider. You are not even like the ISPs. You're cloud. Why?
So yeah, cloud.
Cloud. Is it not cloud?
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think I saw a stat from Interpoint about Starlink. Is it third or fourth?
Earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Like the
think
third,
so.
right?
Yes,
Third.
and you are
Nine fi-
wondering that where did they start? How did they overtake the
So
others?
a lot of people are using Starlink in
Mhm.
Nigeria, and it shows there's a clear demand for it. So
Mhm.
why ground stations? So
Yeah.
they are also known as relay stations or gateway stations. So it's for network relays. Okay, there might be other.
Now I want to understand, like,
so there
our
might be other
listeners.
underground activities going on, right? But
Can
here's
we
the
do
surface
conspiracies?
explanation for why.
Can we do conspiracies?
Don't worry, don't worry. But here's the surface explanation for why satellite internet providers need ground stations.
Mm.
So if you've been following some of my conversations, you notice that the world's internet is run by fiber cables, basically.
Basically.
Those fiber cables connect to landing stations. Landing stations connect to. We have data centers now. In recent years, we are now having more interesting developments in data center space. Things like edge computing. So edge computing is where they're trying to bring these data centers closer to you as the user. So data centers, you typically find them close to the shore, the water, right? So a lot of them are in Lagos, but you will hardly find data centers in a place like Kano or. So, but edge computing, the idea is to be able to bring data centers to more remote locations and bring those data centers closer. So those data centers is what hosts most of the content we have, content delivery networks, and a lot of those things, right? Now, those ground stations, their duty is to actually connect to those data centers.
Okay.
So you connect to your Starlink router, it goes to the satellite. Satellite brings it down to the ground station. Those ground stations now have easy access to data centers that are
In that location.
their locations. So the idea is easy connection to whatever terrestrial internet connectivity you have in that location.
So before
It goes
the
back.
existence of this ground station now, what's the implication with the services that Starlink is providing?
The implication is it's going to be a lot faster.
Faster than is faster.
And a lot more reliable.
Okay.
So, yeah, Starlink is fast, but I've gone to some places where Starlink is very terrible. Like, I had to be asking myself, is this Starlink? I'm not going to mention the place, but it's very, very far, close to Ekbe.
Okay.
Starlink was very terrible there, right? So, but there are pockets of places like that, right? You have issues where if rain is falling, it's very difficult to connect and things like that.
Okay.
So the idea is there's more reliability and more speedier connection. So before data centers, for instance, you could access the internet.
Okay.
The internet will have to go all the way to Europe or the US and back. But now that you have data centers, it's a lot more reliable and it's a lot faster. So that's still the idea behind ground stations. So relay network with whatever terrestrial infrastructure you have available. So that is the surface explanation.
Yeah, surface explanation. And it's interesting because this is done in partnership with Equinix, the company that acquired Main1, and they have a lot of data centers. So it makes sense.
Think about it.
Did I just say it makes sense? Yes, it makes sense in that context. It does make sense. And so as it were now, this is going to increase Starlink's competition. I don't know, the next stats Interpoint is going to release, it will probably be showing maybe they have overtaken the top players.
SpectraNet and is it SpectraNet and Fiber One that are the
In ISPs, internet
Yeah.
provider, probably I can't really remember the stats. Yes, right? Yes. So let's talk about implication. Please,
Implication.
let's do conspiracy.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's the implication of this on the price? Let's start with the price. That seems like a safest place to start.
I think it makes sense for the price to come down a little bit. I
Okay.
don't expect it to come down so much,
Okay.
mostly because the prices are also affected by other factors that we can't control, which is FX. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But and Starlink is not, SpaceX is not a Nigerian company.
Yeah.
And but I think an implication here could be we could see a more pronounced presence of SpaceX in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
I think better customer support, because I don't think their customer support is that great. So I
Okay.
think what they've done is they've made the service so good that.
Yeah, you don't need customer support.
But yeah, the implication is okay. I could see reduced pricing in the future, like more competitive pricing, right? The pricing for the yearly subscription is already very competitive. I think 30,000 naira or 45, between 30 to 45,000 naira. Why I'm saying that range is because I don't know what the FX rate has
You
done
see.
that prices.
Yeah.
But I think more of it is okay. What's the cost of the initial setup? It's very, very expensive.
Yeah, it's very.
Would that reduce? I'm not so sure it's going to reduce. But yeah, is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. So Mojola, let's talk about other implications.
Well, the first implication is the service implication.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of the reliability, the assuredness of the connectivity. Beyond that part of the service implication, then they also need to operate those stations,
Okay.
which falls back a little bit to what Emmanuel was saying. That if you look at it, I think it augurs well for Nigeria in a little sense that there is no way but for SpaceX to increase their on-site presence, because those stations need to be manned, those stations need to be maintained, those
Yeah.
stations need power. From a cost perspective, I suspect, even though Emmanuel thinks I should come down, I suspect that the cost may go up, because having those ground stations also mean that the
More
operational costs
cost.
are going to increase. And as the operational costs are increasing, they may be naira-based operational costs, but because these guys are going to be reporting in USD as a maybe US-based company, they will need to balance out. So I think we should brace up for.
I actually agree.
We should
I
brace
really
up
agree.
Yes,
for
that's
impact.
possible too.
Like a lot of other sectors that are directly.
And then licensing.
FCC
FCC
so.
will start. The issue that Starlink is still having in some African countries is we don't even accept you.
Yeah.
We don't want people to use you. They are stopping people from using Starlink in some countries. Now you're coming into the terrain to come and play. He's going to be you have other.
No, so the licensing I
implications.
think was the last part, which is, the Musk model is a very disrupt the market kind of model, and I think they've been able to do that with Starlink because it's just a plug and play solution that needs almost nothing or no one, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the moment you start to have on ground presence, then you start to enter, you start to enter the territory, and you need to. Would I say link
Play.
up with the powers that be, and also comply to the regulations and the policies that environment demands. Otherwise, there may start to be risk of, access to your stations or your ability to be able to, so I think there's also just a certain kind of limit that you may have without that on-ground presence. So they've tried it, up to a certain point, and they've seen that, look, this market clearly appears to be viable because we are delivering, so much, or there's so much demand in this market. And that's probably led to this need for on-ground stations. But I think in the coming months or weeks,
the one in Lagos will be completed by the end of 2024 based on their projection.
so they should start getting ready for
they're
visits
getting-
from.
Yes, because as it were, if you see the way no tech companies, the way they try to diverge themselves from African countries, they just say that we are platforms. We are gig economy workers are just using our products. We are not really companies. They are not employers, but you are coming in to employ local people, use our local facilities. I wish Starlink the best.
Yeah, we
And
should do the best.
yes,
I think we should be right now. From locally, I think we should also be concerned about data sovereignty. Let's
now
not.
you're getting where you want us to get to.
But I'm not going to go all out and go into a conspiracy. But I'm
Okay.
concerned about that. But
Okay.
let's leave it like that.
Why are you gonna do that? But yes, we have it behind the camera.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Our listeners are not going to hear this. I'm so sorry. But yes, that is it about Starlink and MTN today on the Techpoint Africa Podcast. Thank you, Mojola and Emmanuel, for joining me. It has been a very awesome conversation, and I believe that our listeners have also learned a thing or two or seven from what we've talked about today, and all the expositions you've given. Thank you for joining me. To all our listeners, thank you for joining us once again. Don't forget to check out all the things that happen in African tech this week on the Techpoint Africa website. You can also subscribe to our other podcasts. We have the Equity Merchant podcast. We have the Modern Workplace Conversations podcast. We have the How the Cool Tech Works podcast. You can subscribe to those ones
And
on
that's
any
started. I've not seen that.
How Cool Tech Works. You're late to the party, but it's not too late. How Cool Tech Works, where Bolu talks about the little things we just feel like voice recording, for instance, voice typing, for instance, or recapture. You just goes into the intricacies of it and help us to understand. That's what the podcast is about. We also, all these podcasts also have accompanying newsletters, so do well to subscribe to them, and also subscribe to Tech Point Digest, handled by the Star Girl. Meanwhile, there is a Tech Point Digest mixer coming, and it's only for subscribers. It's coming in September 20, so subscribe and also register to attend. Can't wait to
Is it free?
see. Why would it be free?
Okay.
You want to come and mingle, you want to do it free, so please do it to register for that. I think that is that on today's episode of Techpoint Africa Podcast. Catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.